I guess I ought to be careful with this because these brakes may have been asbestos at one point. That kind of looks like it might be correct. And gasoline gets in your eye. So theoretically, if I press this button, this car will start and run. Do you guys have as much trouble with car work as I do? Hello, I'm Gary, and welcome back to another episode of Red Cap Mechanic here on the 1950 Dodge Meadowbrook. We've hit a bit of snag with the, well, quite a bit of the systems. The fuel system with the carburetor, the ignition system with the coil, but our brake parts did come in, so let's see if we can get those cleaned off and try and get those reassembled at least, so when we do get the rest of this figured out, we can all snap it back together. Over here in what I have dubbed Filth Corner, we're going to try and clean these off. So what we have here are the front and the rear backing plates for the vehicle. They come with little shims, which will spray these down with some brake cleaner, get them cleaned. And then also just a tremendous amount of gunk on them. So we are going to try and get these cleaned up. In order to do that, I brought a power tool to help out with that and speed up the process, because that oil pan was rough. So let's get on this and see how clean we can get it. Coming along. It's a lot of years of gunk and grime on this, but we're cleaning it up. I guess I ought to be careful with this because these brakes may have been asbestos at one point. We're getting there. All right, it's not perfect, but it is better than it was. One thing that I need to work on is not letting the perfect ruin the good. And what I mean by that is I'd like to get this thing 100% clean, but I will never get this project done if I try and make everything absolutely perfect. So I need to just say, hey, is it better? Will it work? Is it safe? And if it meets those criteria, move on. So let's go ahead and get this sprayed down with brake cleaner, and then we'll put on a coat of a Rust-Oleum paint, and I'll get the rest of these taken care of as well. Now that we have these a little bit more cleaned off, we'll hit it with some brake cleaner. And a paper towel. And we'll clean them up. Again, not going for perfect here, just better. So yeah, I'll hit these up and get them cleaned, and then we'll get back to you and we can spray these down with some rust inhibitor. For the rust inhibitor, we're going to be using this engine enamel 550 degree one. So it's got same thing we use on the brake drums. You know, you want it to match. Okay, we'll let these puppies dry and we'll get on to some trying to get the master cylinder off. I think that'll be next. As you can see, we're back under the car again. That's because we're after this guy, the master cylinder, which I think is right there. So I don't think I can film this and take this out, but should have, I think, 4 bolts holding it on. So we'll go ahead and work to get those off, and I've got a new master cylinder as well. You know, I was thinking about it. Maybe I should take my own advice and not let the perfect ruin the good. Meaning, maybe we should leave the master cylinder in there for now and focus on getting the wheels back on and try and not add to the total number of projects we have going. So it's been about an hour. It's also very difficult to access the master cylinder under the car. If I can get the wheels on and it rolling again, I have some ramps that I can drive the car on, and that'll give me a lot more space. So I think that will be the best way to do that, because it's just not working very well under there, and I don't want to add more stuff that's been broken just because I'm trying to make everything perfect. So I need to dial it back in just a smidge. Okay, we're back at the wheels here, so let's start getting these bad boys back on. Came with a little plate, assume it still needs it. Well, aside from that bolt, that I guess it was the bolt that was the problem and not the nut, all the other ones went on okay. I think it looks a lot better painted, as one would expect. Okay, let me get the rest of these on and then we'll move on. Okay, here we are on the rear. We have the new rear brake cylinder. It did not come with any of the sticky bits, unfortunately, but that's why we saved on them. Yeah, that's fine. So you can see the new one definitely looks a lot better than the old one, and that sits right in there, and this guy goes on top, and then that'll sit right there. You can hardly tell that that's the old part. See how those other ones would never have ever cleaned up like that. Not in a million billion years. All right, so we've got this guy. And this should plug into that. So I guess we can find out. Ouch. All right, and then it had 2 bolts By the way, I'm still looking for 2 more of these for the front. I gotta have at least something that looks something like this, or I can't put the front brakes on. And then we're gonna be in real trouble. I was hoping this would come with all new hardware, but unfortunately it did not. Oh, I think these bolted in from the back, actually, just to make it as extra difficult as possible. They do thread in, so we're doing better than we might otherwise be doing. And yes, I am just as excited to see how we do the brake shoes as you are, because I got no template. Okay, thing to know. This line, the brake line, has to go in, I guess, before you can easily do anything else. So make sure that's right. That is hard to line up. All right, anybody remember what those bolts were? 7/16? No? Just a little too small. 1/2? Yeah, that's the ticket. You know, I'm going to say that looks actually pretty good with the black and the silver. Shame no one will ever see this. Okay, now how big is the brake line? Three-eighths. All right. Okay, so we have this as reassembled as it was ever. Also, I did get new ones of these, because I mean, like, look at that. Like, that's not ever going to work. So let me get the other wheel cylinder in on the passenger side, and we'll come back to you. Okay, does anybody know how to put drums on, brake drums on a 1950 Dodge? I've always heard that big go on back. That kind of looks like it might be correct. Button, who's got the button? Alright, so it's got like a little obelisk, I don't know. But it goes here. And that is to make it look cool. I don't know. Not really quite sure what that's for, but we'll put it in there. All right. We got this guy. Oh, bolt. Did I not have a bolt when I... Did this have bottom bolts? I got, tried to get all the brake hardware, but it's hard to find sometimes. That's becoming one of the biggest problems for me. All right, we got 4 long ones. and 2 short ones. And a bunch of these things. Maybe for those? The missing bolts? Oh. Which one of these is big? Okay. Like that. Like that. Okay. Don't move now. Okay. I'm going to need a minute to review to see if I had bolts on these, because I'm not sure where they are. I'll be back to you. I must be losing my mind, because I said that this car had no brake hardware on it, and they had these in the trunk, and I think these are the bolts we need, so I'm going to try and extract them as best I can. But this also gives us a template for what we're looking for, so, which is really, really nice. So the short spring is on top, and maybe another short spring on the bottom, and they go inside these clips. All of this is good to know. So let me get these bolts off. These bolts do not want to leave their home. So I sprayed them down with some PB Blaster, and we're gonna let it sit on that for a while and just kind of eat on it. But we've got those guys, so we have an example of how the rear drums are put together, which is great. Do you guys have as much trouble with car work as I do? I know I'm not an expert at it by any means, but seems like it just fights you tooth and nail sometimes. I've still got those brake parts doused in penetrating oil, and trying to get a little bit ahead on those. Yeah, so I'm going to keep working at that, and we'll either get back to you in a little bit or later on tomorrow. In the interest of keeping the feet moving, let's try and get this thing cleaned off. I want to say that this is called the Spindle, but don't quote me on that. Now we're just going to be putting more grease on it, so we don't need it to be perfectly, you know, eat off clean, but try and get all of the old gunky stuff out that we can. All right, we got a little bit of shine to it, and we'll hit up the other side and get back to you. Now that we got the inner wheel bearing out, thank you for the tip, we can clean out the last of this gunk, and should be ready for a new grease. And I learned you only do this on the front ones. The rear ones don't require the grease. Just kind of using my fingers to try and push out the last remaining debris. Okay. Now, this is ready to be put on. However, we're out of light. I'm out of cleaner. And I don't have the bolts to put all these brake hardware together. But we're getting closer. I think that's going to have to be it for today. But we'll get back on this tomorrow and keep making some headway wherever we can. All right, well, today's been kind of a struggle as well. I did go down to the American Bolt Company and picked up some bolts. They're not quite the same. The one on the right is the original bolt, and the one on the left is the one I got. Oh, you know what? There we go. It both has threads and a blank space and a nut. So the only difference is this one, the original one, is like off-centered a little bit. It's a little ellipsis, like when you turn it. And I think that's because this is a brake adjustment bolt. They didn't have any, and I haven't been able to source any, so I'm going to try and use these as best I can till I can figure something else out to do, because these have not been locatable, unfortunately. In other news, I have the old brake pads on. I've been trying to get those two lower bolts out because I also don't have that hardware, but these guys are stuck. I have set this thing on fire. I have hit it with a hammer. I have used a breaker bar, and I've gotten them to turn, but there's a nut on the other side from which they will not turn from, and I've been doing that for like an hour and a half now, and I'm calling it quits on those. I'm just gonna go back to the bolt company and buy some of those other bolts and see if they work. I do wish things would come with all the hardware needed to install, but c'est la vie. All right, let's take a look. All right, this is the front captain side. So the brake shoes are going to go in there. The calipers are going to go here, or the wheel cylinders rather, and those two screws are going to go here. So we'll give that a shot and we'll see what happens. Okay, so we have the front top one on. This is, I don't have the back nut on yet, but I'm just trying to test it for fitment. This is another one where it's got two lines off the same hose, so it's a bit tricky. So what I did was I left this one attached, and I just drew the hose through the hole in the back of the plate and twirled the wheel cylinder until it was fully in, and then I put the wheel cylinder back on there and put the bolt through. So it's got a, what I think is a secure connection. I guess we'll find out when and if we test the brakes. All right, I'll go ahead and get this bottom one on, and then we'll look at the brake shoes. I gotta tell you, there's a lot of things that are cool about the engineering in the 1950s. Brakes is not one of them. This is a terrible design. My goodness gracious, this is quite complicated and not bueno. I can definitely see why people will pay to get the disc brake upgrade kit, because this one's not easy, I will tell you that. Okay, let's keep going. I'm going to try and get the little line in here. So, were you just screaming at me saying, Gary, you put these on fast backwards? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't quite know. Yeah, get in there. That bolt needs to go under those. Fantastic. fantastic. Look, I don't know who needs to hear this. Probably people that worked at Dodge in the 1950s, but your brakes do not need to be a puzzle. This does not have to be as complicated as this is. My goodness, you got the springs and you got the bolts and you got the 2 cylinders. I mean, come on, man. But I think it's coming together. So, I mean, these are more brakes than this car has had since I've owned it, so that's a plus. So we have the backing plate on, the bolts in. Not sure how much you can see. We've got the brake juice line, the cylinders on, the brake pads on. So this front driver's side should be ready to accept the wheel. As you can maybe tell, I've lost all the light, so I can't really work anymore today, but that's okay. Though you may be seeing this a little bit later, today is July 2nd, so we're coming up on America's 250th birthday, so happy birthday, America. Congratulations. You don't look a day over 175. I hope you all have, I guess, had a wonderful 4th of July, kept all of your fingers and toes, and we'll be back here in a couple of days. Alrighty, new day, new us, yet again. I watched some videos on the YouTubes, and more importantly, I watched my own video of how I took apart the carburetor, and I think I figured out that I forgot to put a linkage together at the bottom. So I'm hoping that will help, as well as I got a book that I had ordered. These will hopefully be the last 2 things I kind of have to get, but I got the Dodge Shop Manual. D34 is our model right here. So this should help me out understanding what to do. It has a really helpful section on the carburetor. And maybe I'll be able to start actually naming these things what they are. So that one is the piston assembly pump. The other one is the dash pot assembly pump. And then that third one is the vacuum economy piston assembly. So hopefully with this, that'll be everything I need, as well as I got some spark plug wires. However, they're not put together, so we get to figure that out together, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. On the plus side, doing this 3 or 4 times makes it a lot faster to take it off. Okay, so the problem, one of the problems I ran into was this linkage down here. I did not connect it as I was supposed to, so it was this thing that connects the linkages together. So I just have to figure out how to pull that one out, or be even smarter and just take the top off. Okay, now that we got all of the connecting stuff out of there, when I had last been here 3 days ago, I filled this bowl with gasoline. Let's see if any of it remains. There's a little. Okay, so that gives me access to this. And gasoline gets in your eye, and that hurts. Ah! But it does squirt. Ah! Okay. The squirter's working. Okay, so push this down and connect these 2 pieces. Alright, we got those connected. Now, that had that kind of gnarly looking connection thing on it. Ah. So that Okay, I think I see how it goes. Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of the team. I won't. Alright. Okay. Okay. I think I finally got it on. It's a bit of a pain in the keister, but it is critical to making a carburetor pump fuel in this particular model. So, as you can see, the spring, or that little C-clip right there, connects to this pumping thing and to the throttle actuator. And then it has a little tiny clip that clips in to hold that in place. And with that in place, then when you accelerate, you get that squirting motion, which is what we're looking for. So that, I think, is going to have restored this to functionality, which is awesome. Other thing of note I think we fixed was this guy, which is the dash pot, which in effect is supposed to make it so when you are accelerating heavily and you let off the gas, it reduces a lot of the chance of this carburetor stalling, because instead of just going to zero gas, it'll slowly let off of it. I had originally built this, or put it together with just one of these little clips here, but it actually needs two to hold that up and down. So now hopefully that'll work, because that arm connects down here to this linkage, which is connected to the thing we just put on. So there's a lot of connections going on. So let's go ahead and get this bad boy back on the engine. Okay, we have the carburetor back on. I do notice I filled up the bowl and there's a bit of a leak, so I need to tighten these down a bit more. So let me get that done and I'll get right back to you. It's just basically going around all the screws, making sure they're tight, because we don't want gasoline to be leaking out of this, or air to be leaking into it. One of the good things about gasoline is that it'll dry quickly, so we'll be able to tell if we have a continuous leak or if we're done on that. Okay, now let's test the Squirtle action. Squirter action. Here's the throttle. So if we pull on the throttle, that should go through all of the linkages here and squirt something out the top. Ah! So at least we know that that's working. I've got the sisson choke hooked back up. So theoretically, if we can get spark to work, we are going to be in business. Okay, so as I have said several times before, sometimes a project keeps getting away from you. So in order to test this coil, I need to get to where the battery cable comes from. That was this one that we made, but to get to where this one comes from, I have to get into this loom down here, this wire loom. But in order to get into that, I had to free up the parking brake cable, which is now free, which is probably not super great, but we're gonna just stick it over here for right now, because it sits in this thing. So now we should have a bit more room to kind of get in here and figure out what's going on. So let me work to get these out of here, and then we'll take a look. All right, after some bending, we got this part of the loom out, which then runs back over here to this other area, and it's also wrapped in this wire. So I think I'm just going to cut all these wires open, not disassemble them, but cut them open, because I need to get in here and see what's going on and why that's not working. So let me start carefully cutting this so we can trace this wire back to its origin, which might be this thing or might be inside. I don't know. All right, still getting into the electrical. I tested from the base of the wire to the end of the terminal here, and there was continuity. Now to test this coil to see if it really is a 6-volt coil, I've got my multimeter set up to horseshoe mode on the lowest setting, and then touching each of the terminals should give us a number there. And depending on what the number is, will tell us whether this is a 6-volt or 12-volt coil. Now, 1 to 2 ohms should mean a 6-volt, and 3 to 5 should mean a 12-volt. So I'm going to touch these two and look and see what we got here. Touching the coil. Touching it better. Alright, we're at 1.9.8. And that may just because this is a not an expensive multimeter. Oh my goodness. Okay, 1.7. So we can confirm that this coil is a 6-volt coil. So all things being equal, we've got continuity, this coil should be getting power. So, and it's 6 volts, so this should be sending voltage through to the distributor. So let's get this all hooked back up and see what we can do. Alrighty, we have been tasked through fate to make our own spark plugs. I don't have any special equipment, so we're just going to go low and slow and try and do our best. So we are going to need our multimeter, because we're going to need to make sure that continuity stays throughout this process. So we'll start off by testing. And we can see that, yes, there is continuity just in the wire as it was sent. So we'll need to take one of these gnarly looking spark plug wire things, go to the end and kind of just jam it down on there as best as we can do, trying to center it as much as we can, and then clamp the sides in. Alright, now let's test to see that we still have continuity. So we'll put one of the ends on that, and the other end we'll put on this side. And amazingly enough, we still have continuity. So, where'd my little rubber boot go? Ugh. So we'll take our rubber boot, pop it over here, whoop. How far do we push it in? I don't know. Maybe that. Okay, now let's check one more time to make sure that we've got continuity still. And yes, we still do. So, what that tells us is we made a spark plug wire. And crap, I forgot. I got to slide this through that little tunnel first. So let's move over there. We'll do everything we did and put this on and see if we see how it's working. Our handy dandy firing order is 153624. So I've already got one on the first one. So the second one We'll have to go on number 5. So we'll run it through our little tunnel. Put it on number 5. That doesn't just slide on there very well, does it? It's not quite going on, so we'll get a little bit of a persuader. Now it's on. All right. We've got the cord. So we'll put the boot back on it. Now we can test continuity one last time before putting it on the distributor. My goodness, we still have continuity. Ladies and gentlemen, we made a spark plug cable. All right, so put that on the next one, and theoretically we do that to the other 4 and this will run. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the spark plugs and we'll get back to you. Alrighty, all the spark plugs are in. I tested continuity on all of them. They're all fine. We tested continuity to the coil. It was fine. The coil to the distributor. There's gas in the carburetor, so theoretically, if I press this button, this car will start and run, and we will have fixed it back to the state when we got it. Let's find out. Something may be amiss. Shoot! Ow! I do have the key rolled forward. By the way, I noticed a number of you had been concerned about my health and well-being. Thank you. Because of the heat. It is very hot, but I have started coming out here later in the evening when the sun isn't quite so intense and enjoying some nice iced tea, which has been helping. And I also kind of am pacing myself, and if I need a break, I'll take one. So I appreciate your concern about me. I'm going to do my best not to keel over on you. I'm not sponsored by Brisk, but they are good. All right, so what are we looking at here? The spark plugs should be getting spark. There's continuity from them to the distributor. The coil is getting 6.24 volts. So, well, double check that. All right, I'm going to hook it to the positive ground and then touch this part of the coil, and we're getting 6 volts. Why would we be getting 6 volts? Are we getting 6 volts on the other side? If I touch this side? Yes. Okay. So the coil is getting power. You know what? Let me try making a new spark plug out of the last wire that I have. Maybe that'll work. Starting to look like a real electrician here, aren't I? Okay. I think we got something figured out. So you switch it to the horseshoe mode, ohms, put it on the lowest setting, and you touch the 2 terminals. We're getting between 1 and 2. Alright, and if we do it to the original coil, we're also getting between 1 and 2. So both of these are 6-volt coils. However, if we crank it up to 20,000, now we tested the outer windings. Now to test the inner winding, you put it on any terminal and then touch the inside. And we're getting 60 or 6,380 something, which is about what we're looking for. It's kind of a weak coil, but that's fine. Now, let's see what happens when we touch our new coil. Any thoughts? You guessed it. Nothing! You get nothing! This coil is bad. Therefore, it's not going to make any spark. Therefore, that's fantastic. That's just fantastic. So, let's just try popping this one on, see if it works. I went through a whole lot of effort for that, but that's okay. If our theory is correct, this vehicle will fire. Granted, those aren't hooked up very well. Boy, I'm beginning to think I'm maybe not a very good mechanic. It's best if we're getting spark. No spark. Okay. Alrighty, team. So where are we at right now? I have established that this coil, the primary, or the one that comes out of the middle, is not giving us the reading that we need on our multimeter. Therefore, this is probably a bad coil. On our original coil there, we tested it, and it was giving us the readings that we needed. So that's and also it was running correctly. So that's probably a good coil. We've tested continuity up to here, and it does have electricity. It's got voltage, but for whatever reason, and there's continuity to the end of this thing, but no spark comes out of this when we're cranking it over. So, operating under the assumption that this is a good coil, because we tested it and we also know that it was working, why would this coil wire that we also tested and we knew that it had continuity, would that not work to produce spark? Because I would hold it to a ground and nothing would happen. No spark at all. I don't have an answer to that, because the key was turned on and we were cranking it over and we weren't getting anything. We've tested continuity on all the spark plugs, and that was good. So from the spark plug to the spark plug wires down to the distributor, we have a pretty good feeling that there is continuity. From the distributor through this coil cable to the top of the coil, there is continuity. We tested it. From these wires, there is continuity to the battery. Within the coil itself, there is continuity between the two small side posts. It was giving us a proper reading of between 1.5 to 2, and the center post and one of the side posts, which was giving us a proper reading of about 6,300. So why would we not have any spark when turning over the engine? As you can see, I'm kind of out of light today, and I'm kind of out of ideas for what that could be. I don't mind going and buying a new coil, but it seems like the old one that we had was working just fine. So I don't think getting a new coil would help, because we tested it. I don't know why we wouldn't have any spark on it. If you guys have any ideas, please let me know, because I'm kind of at a loss for that right now. But the good news is, it does look like our carburetor is doing carburetor things again, so that's very nice. So it seems like all we're missing from getting this engine running is the spark. But again, I don't know why. I will go to the store tomorrow and buy a new coil, because I also have to go buy some more bolts for the brakes. And then we should be able to get the brakes back on. And if we can figure out this electrical aspect, this car should be able to move under its own power next time. That's my goal. But I don't know why that's not working right now. Because I know that these cars have like a voltage regulator. I mean, we know that was working when the car was running 2 weeks ago. And even if it wasn't working, wouldn't that you still get a spark? It's been really fascinating though, because we've been using our brains, our big brains, and our tools like the multimeter to try and figure out what's going on. And one of my favorite looking tools is the level 1 multimeter. But I still can't figure out why we're not getting any spark. So I'm going to think on that, and we will get back to you next time. But I appreciate you watching. We did get some good work done this video. We got the I think we got pretty much those brake pads done here. So this is ready to accept a wheel. And then I just have to do that to the other 3 tires, but I know what to do now, so hopefully it'll go a little bit faster. Still don't have any brake pedal, so we'll work on that. But yeah, the sparkle issue, that's really interesting. Why? Because I mean, it's not even getting to, like, we're testing it before it gets to the distributor, so it can't be anything to do with the distributor, because we're just popping the coil wire off and putting it next to a ground, a hunk of metal basically. There should be spark, but there isn't. Anyway, I hope you all are doing well, and that if you're working on any projects, they're also going well, because it's really fascinating to work on these old cars, because it's just kind of you versus the car sometimes, and I think that's a really interesting struggle to try and figure these things out. So I'm feeling optimistic, but yeah, once we get this done, we should be good to go. And I appreciate all of you for watching. Red Cat Mechanic.